Hi, I'm Chef Gail Sokol and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're making a strawberry lemon curd tart that looks like $1,000,000, like you went to a French bistro and purchased it. And it's the easiest thing to make. It's fruity, it's light, and I did a video on lemon curd 2 ways. And I use this as the basis of my tart, and it's so delicious and just has the right amount of pucker because of the lemon. And it goes beautifully with the berries on top. So the first thing we need to do is make our pâte sucrée, which is our like a sugar cookie crust. It's an enriched crust that we're going to put on the bottom of our tart pan. I usually like to make it in the food processor. If you don't have a food processor, don't worry about it. You can use a fork and a knife to cut in the butter, or you can actually use a pastry blender. So I have 1½ cups of all-purpose flour. And I'm going to put that right into my food processor. Okay. 1/3 cup of confectioner's sugar. If you want to use granulated, you can, but it actually makes a nice smooth crust where it doesn't get any grains from that sugar. And I'm just going to pulse it very quickly. Pulse, pulse, pulse. And then I'm going to take 1 stick of butter that I cubed. This is unsalted butter, and I'm actually going to scatter it around, and it's cold. Make sure it's cold. All right. And we're going to pulse it. And I'm going to do my secret. I'm going to take my kitchen towel and put it over, because sometimes these food processors give you a poof of flour all around you. So I'm just going to pulse 8, 10 times just until the butter is pea-sized pieces. Oh, it's a good thing I did that. All right. And then what I'm going to do, see, it comes out through all ends of this. Take 1 egg yolk. So that's not the whole egg, 1 egg yolk. And I'm going to combine it with 3 tablespoons of fully fatted sour cream. It's just going to add such a nice richness to it. And I'm going to stir that together. I'm going to get a spoon and stir that up. And then we're going to add that. Because normally you would add maybe a little bit of ice water. And this will just enrich this crust. So it's sort of a melt in your mouth, almost like a shortbread flavor, but not as hard. So we're going to add that. And this, the fat in the sour cream just gives this a beautiful little tartness. It goes beautifully with the lemon curd. Lovely. Again, I'm going to cover, or else we're going to be wearing the flour, and I'm just going to pulse until a dough begins to form. And then if you've seen any of my other videos where I make tart crusts or pie crusts, I usually take the entire contents of my food processor and I put it into a bowl. Because right now it looks sort of crummy, and I don't mean crummy as in bad, but crummy because it's like crumbly. And I'm going to put this in here. It doesn't form a dough just yet. You don't want to overmix with that food processor because you don't really want to create a lot of gluten. So now I'm going to take my hands, your best tools, and I'm just going to gather. Watch. If I can gather it so it's sort of wet sand, but even more so, it really holds together nicely, I'm just going to push. Oh, you can feel how luxurious this feels. You can actually feel the butter and the sour cream. It's deliciously, it just feels like it's going to taste good. I just know it is. And then what I'm going to do is just gather it together. I'm not kneading it because I don't want to create any toughness, but I'm going to sort of wipe up the bowl. And I always keep a little icy water nearby just in case the dough is a little bit dry. You got a little overzealous with your flour when you measured it, but this is perfect. And it's coming together beautifully in a dough. And I'm going to put it in a piece of plastic wrap. And then I'm going to chill it in the fridge for about 20 minutes. I can even freeze it at this point. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to give this little baby a nap, and I'm going to, I always say, tuck the baby in and then push down so that it's almost like a disc. It doesn't matter what shape it is right now, but about a 1-inch thick disc, and it's ready to be chilled for about 20 minutes. All right, so I just let my dough rest for about 20 minutes. This relaxes any gluten that I formed by gathering it together, and it allows the butter to chill so it's easier to roll out. I have preheated my oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and I have a sheet pan ready because you never want to bake, and we're going to bake this on a false bottom tart pan. You never want to bake it just by itself because the false bottom is a false bottom, and you don't want to be wearing your tart all over you. So look how pretty. I have a tart pan that's 8 by 11. All right, so that, if you don't have a rectangular pan, I just got this and I'm dying to try it. So if you don't have one, you can use a circular one. You can even use a pie pan if you want. So I'm going to set this right on here. I'm going to unwrap my baby who had his or her little nap. All right. And again, these doughs are very forgiving because you can patch, and you do want to flour your surface. And I have a rolling pin, and we're baking this blind. Remember, baking blind means you're baking your pie shell without, or your tart shell without a filling. I'm going to roll it around in my flour, flip it over, take my rolling pin, and if it's still a little hard, give it a few whacks. All right. And if you notice, my pan is rectangular, so I'm going for a rectangular theme as far as the shape. So that's why I'm going this way. If you were round, you would try to get it into a rounder shape. If it breaks, do not worry. Remember, it's got sour cream, it's got butter, it's got an egg yolk. These are all fats. These are all things that can cause tenderness. We love tenderness. As bakers, we love it. We love it as something to eat because it tastes so good, but it can also be very difficult to work with, so you want to be careful. So I'm going to get to, as best I can, about 1/8 of an inch thick, and I may have to patch. Matter of fact, I know I will because this is a very tender crust, and you can see it's cracking a little bit. It's a cracking in the shell here, so that's okay. All right, and I'm not going for the exact size of the pan. I'm so excited about using this pan. It's so pretty. It just reminds me of like a French tart pan that you would find in France. So what I'm going to do is just sort of take as much of a rectangle as possible and fit it in. If you see you have a little too much flour, take your pastry brush and brush that off. Okay. And I did spray, although it's got a lot of butter in here, I did spray my pan with nonstick cooking spray. That's just my little thing. I like to do that. So put that in here. All right, again, patch, patch, patch. If you still have a little flour, don't worry. I'm going to bring it up here. Okay. And then I'm just going to use what I have and patch it as I go to fill in that crust. And you want to go right up the sides. All right, you want to go right up the sides, all sides. And even go higher than the sides because we can always pinch it off. You see how it's sharp on the edge? I just pinch it off. And then you should have some pie weights. So my pie weights, because I don't want to spend a lot of money on pie weights, are just dried beans. So I have my dried beans for eating, and I have my dried beans for my baking blind, for my pie shells. So you can use this over and over again, these pie weights. It's nothing that you need to throw out or waste. Get a few pounds, and then I keep them in a big bag, and they're there whenever I want to bake. And bake a blind pie crust. I really don't know where the saying came from. When I was writing my textbook about professional baking, I tried to find out where the origins of baking blind actually came from, and I never could find out. Even my editors couldn't find out. So I have no idea where that saying came from, but it's definitely not blindfolding the baker and sort of twirling her around a few times and seeing if she can find the oven. That's not it. That's not it. Although that would be fun. It would be fun until you got to the oven and banged your head on it. See what I'm doing? I'm going up the sides. Pinch, pinch, pinch. It looks pretty good. I still have, I'm going to turn around so you can see I still have a little bit left to go. Pinch, pinch, pinch. You're not going to have a lot of the dough left over. If you do have some, bake it off as cookies or just scraps. That's chef's choice. So if you bake it off as scraps, you have to eat it because it's quality control, right? You have to figure out if it tastes good. And it tastes good. It tastes so good and tender. It's like a little shortbread crust, so yummy. All right, so I'm just pinching. If you notice, this is super easy. You don't have to be an expert if you see any cracks. For goodness sakes, patch them together. You don't even need to use water because this is pretty soft. You don't want it to get too soft, but it is a little bit more malleable than a lot of pie crusts are. So just get that over there. Just going to brush a little of my flour. And then just going to make sure I'm going around. I take the longest time to make my pie crust because I like it to be perfect, or as perfect as we can be as humans. And then I just sort of roll it over, and just sort of pinch off the excess. And make sure you're up the sides. All right, just make sure you're up the sides there. Pinch that off. It's super easy to do. And then you're going to get your pie weights ready. But you're not going to put your pie weights directly into your pie shell because they'll bake right in there. And then you'll end up with a bean tart. And that would not be tasty. Trust me. I had a student once that said, Chef Sokol, why are we baking with beans? What is going on here? So he learned real fast. The beans are not for baking, they're just for keeping the pie shell upright and preventing any steam from getting underneath and helping it to shrink down. I'm using a fork, and I'm going to do something known as stippling or docking. And we're just going to go across our pie shell, and we're just going to make some fork marks. That too will allow steam to escape. I need a lot of insurance that my tart shell is going to come out really beautiful, and I want the sides to stay up. I don't want it to look like a flat Frisbee because then where would I put my lemon curd and my strawberries, right? There'd be no place. So I just go up the sides a little bit, all right, a little bit. And then I take a piece of parchment paper, all right, and I'm going to tuck that in without destroying your crust, and I'm going to carefully move it onto my sheet pan, all right. And then my beans, I'm going to pour my beans. These happen to be black beans. And I'm just pouring them in. And you want them to get right to the edges. Right to the edges. And you're going to bake this 375 for about 20 minutes or so. And then we're going to remove the beans and put it back in the oven to bake it for a few more minutes. All right? 375 for about 20 minutes. So my tart's been baking for 20 minutes, and now I have to very gently take my parchment paper out, and it's hot and the beans are hot. So grab a corner, that's why it's got to come up the sides. Gently, don't rip it up. Go to your bowl of beans where your beans were and just let them fall back in. And then you would throw out your parchment paper. And now I'm going to put this in. It's still a little bit, you can see it's a little bit darker in certain areas, so that's still raw. So it's going in for another 5. So I baked my tart for 5 more minutes. Remember, I removed the beans and it looks gorgeous. There's no doughy spots. I've let it cool and I actually took the sides off. And what I did was I put it on a can. I just gently fit it off and there's still a bottom. The metal bottom is still on here. I put it on my serving platter so I can decorate it a lot more easily and it won't slide around. Here's my luscious lemon curd. So I'm gonna pour about 3/4 of a cup to a cup in, depending on how big your pan is and how, what size pan, what shape pan you're making. All right. So good. Oh, tart. And you're gonna take an offset. Remember, it doesn't have sides. So go easy. And then I'm going to rotate my pan so I can get in all corners. And I'm just going to spread it ever so carefully. And it's not going to fill the tart shell. So don't get upset. I'm not going to fill the tart shell because the strawberries are really the stars of the show here. But when people try the strawberries, they're going to get that little zing of lemon. Yum. All right, here we go. Try not to get any on the sides. There we go. I can't help myself. And I have two different ways that I slice my strawberries. I thought it might be fun to shingle them. So I'm gonna shingle them this way, thin slices, and I'm gonna get the biggest ones I can. And then I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do the other direction. See how pretty that looks already? Whoops. I'm gonna lift him up. Hold on. We had a strawberry accident, and sometimes that happens. Just pick it up and eat it. And no one will ever know. Okay. So keep going. You didn't see anything, right? Keep going. Till the other side. All right. Now I'm going to take the strawberries with the outside showing and I'm going to go this way. All right. So I'm going to decorate my tart. And take your time doing this because you want to make it real pretty. And then we're going to decorate it with whipped cream. So you can see the beautiful pattern that I made. You can do whatever you like. And I took some whipped cream. This is stabilized whipped cream. And I do have a video on how to make that if you're interested. But I'm just going to go around the outside because I don't want to cover up our beautiful pattern. So I'm just going to do just a little back and forth swirls to almost look like a braid. All right. And then I'm going to rotate. You can do whatever you want. You can leave the whipped cream off. This is a pretty big pan, so I used 2 cups of whipped cream, a little smattering of confectioner's sugar, and a little vanilla. I may have to refill here. And you see I'm just making like little C's back and forth, and it almost has a braided effect. And I'm not going to be able to finish, so I'm going to refill. So you take your pastry bag, and I have a large star tip in there. I'm just going to put my cream in, and this has been stabilized with gelatin. So if you watch that video, you'll know how to do this, and it will be good to go in your fridge for a couple of days at least. All right, you want to get that little air pocket out. Here we go. So we're going to go back and forth. Oh my goodness, it's lovely. It's lovely. And I made some lemon zest. I took the long strands, and I think I'm going to put those on the strawberries themselves. Look what I'm doing. Because that's the theme, right? Strawberries and lemon. And just let it sort of fall where it may. All right? Little whimsy here. Yum, yum, yum. And that really is going to add to the power of the lemon flavor. Remember, there's lemon zest. If you do make the lemon curd, there's lemon zest in it as well. And that's where your lemon flavor is. And then since we don't want the rest of the lemon to feel bad, I cut up little bits of the actual lemon. And I'm actually going to put those on our whipped cream. All right? So I'm just going to put them just every once in a while. Oh, it's so pretty. Looks like a little French tart. And I'm just going to go around. Candied lemon peel would do well very nicely here if you wanted, instead of the fresh lemon. But fresh is always lovely. Just going to do it sort of as I feel. No rules with where you put your lemons, right? You can do whatever you want, but it is lovely. Nothing says spring and fruitiness as a beautiful strawberry lemon curd tart. So I hope you make this. I hope you impress your friends and family, because they will be. Trust me on that. I hope you become a subscriber. Till next time.